We'll give it 30 more seconds and we'll start. Just while we're waiting, seeing we've started the recording. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. Assuming all goes to plan, we'll put these on the website and yeah, by the AphA website just for people to watch who couldn't make it. Okay, it's 2 minutes past now, so we will make a start. Thank you everybody for joining. So this is the introduction workshop for AphA's press registration for the October window. For those who don't know me, I'm Mark Foy. Day job is Associate Editor of Performance at Manchester Trust, and I've got Sigal with me today as well. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Sigal. I've been a member of AphA for many, many years now, and I'm a registered analyst, and I am part of the Professional Development Committee. My current job is in developing curriculum for analysts for the NHS. So, yep.
Thanks, Sigal. Yeah, so as Sigal said, we're both part of AphA's Professional Development Committee. So we'll make a start. So great to see everybody here today, and obviously taking that first step of starting professional registration. This will be an open session for questions. So there's some slides to talk that we'll talk through, Sigal and I. Do chip in as we go along. Stick your hand up, questions in the chat, or just shout out if you want. To be honest, this is your session, so happy to take questions however they come. We'll be finished within the hour, again, depending on the length of the questions, but this is really just to get some information across to you guys and then hopefully help you as you apply in October. Right, just before we start, and just to gauge who we've got on, don't worry, I'm not going to make everybody talk just yet, just to get a feel for where people are up to in their application. If you've applied previously and you're renewing, or if you're quite far along applying and you just want those finishing touches, can we do a reaction of a love heart if that's you, if you're reapplying, or if you're 90% along in your application? Okay, either nobody can hear me or that doesn't apply to anybody, that's fine. If you've started and just want a bit more advice, or you've kind of got a bit of a working example, can I get an applause? Okay, so last one, this should be every now for a thumbs up. If you haven't started and you just want to get a bit of information of how it all works, give us a thumbs up. Okay, lovely. So this is where we're at. Thanks everybody, just so we can gauge kind of how much detail we talk into and where we're up to. Fantastic. Okay, we'll start off with a bit of an overview of kind of what professional registration is, then we'll talk through the process. As I say, do shout out, chip in wherever to get your questions in. So just a bit of an overview first. So as I'm sure you may be aware, but if you don't, so FedIP is the overarching professional body which AphA is part of. So FedIP is that umbrella organisation. You can't be a member of FedIP. You have to be a member of one of the bodies below it, such as AphA or IRIM or BCS or CILIP, or I can't remember the rest. But FedIP are the ones who manage the public register. And what they do is they're the ones who set kind of high level standards. And then each of those professional bodies tailor them to be appropriate to their membership. So obviously you're here for AphA today, which is focused on the analytics, data engineers, data scientists. As I say, FedIP are the ones who hold the register. It's probably a little bit small on that picture there, but once you've gone through this process, your name will appear on their website, which is always quite a nice moment to see your name up in the lights there as registered and have your membership and your date you were accepted there. So as I said, AphA is the one who's kind of licensed by FedIP to set the standards for what I'll call the analytics family. For shorthand, I'll probably just call it analyst or analytics, but I do mean that wider family of data engineers, data scientists, anybody with that analyst umbrella. So yeah, this is the route for that analyst family. And as Sigal mentioned, so we're part of the PDC, the Professional Development Committee. So that committee has taken those FedIP standards and made them relevant to that analyst profession from there. The committee meets monthly and they'll constantly review and update them to make sure they're relevant. So when you do apply, again, we do welcome feedback when you are applying. You know, we're constantly refining and making the process as good as we can. So as you're going through and you know, today might be an opportunity as well, or when there's another session a bit later on. Yeah, welcome to hear your thoughts. Okay, so why do it? I won't go too much on about this because I want to talk a bit more about the process. But again, for anybody who's a bit on the fence about why to do it, again, as analytics is a relatively new profession, or you know, a lot more, or not as developed. You know, you talk about your finance, your HRs, procurements, and more clinical ones. You know, a long history of professionalization, and this is actually where AphA is now getting onto that. It's that validation of your skills, regardless of again of academic history. That's about how you apply what you do. How many? There's about 28 of us on the call now. We could talk about our roots and our academic or history, and I think we'd come up with 28 or 29 people now join different answers. You know, there's not that one route that you might see from other things from there. So this is about tying your experience together. And it's somebody independent assessing your competency and your credibility to do the role from there. I always see it as a real badge of honor as kind of a growing profession from there. Sigal, before I move on to the paperwork a bit more, if you want to add about the process or why?
Professional registration has really given me so much confidence in what I do, because it's been assessed by my peers, other professionals, and basically they said, yes, we know that you can do what, you know, you're really good at what you're doing. So I think that even just personally, it was a great reason for me to re-register when I re-registered, is because it's given me personally so much in my confidence in practicing as a practicing analyst, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think confidence is a big thing that I've noticed as well from both myself and people. It's, you know, a real sense of community and belonging in what you do. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on that because again, you've all made that great first step of coming on here. So we'll get into the process. So what I'm just going to do now is walk through an application. As I said a few times, do shout out with your questions as you're going through. So all the information is on the paper on the website. All the links to the paperwork are on there. What you'll need to do first is think about the level you want to apply at. So there's 4 levels: practitioner, senior, advanced, and leading. I'll talk a bit more about the difference in a minute on a slide. We do ask that you use only the AphA documents only. So again, you may have dissertations or other project works, other CVs that you want to share. To make it possible to map to those Fed IP standards, we do want applications only in that format. Those things I've just mentioned may form part of your evidence that you'll reference in the application form. And all the documents are on the AphA website or hosted through the Fed IP hub in a minute, which I'll talk about. Okay, so this is just a few screenshots from the website. So again, we'll put a link in the chat at the end, or hopefully you've all seen it. To get further information, click here to apply. We have just migrated to using the Fed IP hub, so the links may change slightly now. I probably need to update my slide actually. It'll take you through to the Fed IP website to download your forms now. But I'll talk a bit more about that when we get to the end about the actually submitting. Just coming back to the levels, what we've got on the application forms on the website is quite a handy little summary of all the differences in levels. I'll just keep this on the screen for a minute to read rather than talk through it. But what you can see is going from practitioner up to leading, you know, the subtle differences that make those changes each level. So I'll just keep that there and I'll stop talking for a minute to let people read it. Okay, hopefully that's enough for a quick speed read. Hopefully should be quite kind of self-explanatory. Your practitioner level is, you know, autonomy for yourself, and then as you go from senior to advanced to leading, you know, it becomes autonomy or, you know, responsibility for departments and directorates and so on from there. So we have this for all the standards. There's no right or wrong place of where you put yourself on this. It's not linked to pay or to bands or job title or anything like that. It's about your skills and your experience. What I'd recommend is to get this document and kind of go through it and just see where you land the most. You might have a few in senior and a few in advanced, 1 or 2 in lead and couple in practitioner. Just kind of make a judgment of where what feels comfortable for you. Again, do reach out to the committee via the website. Any questions, we're happy to talk you through and advice from there. Yeah, what you'll have to think about is what you can evidence, and actually, is there anything that you're going to come unstuck on if you go for a too high level, or you're not pushing yourself high enough if you went for a lower one. Sigal, I don't know if you want to come in around any tips or advice about picking the right level.
There is a document that shows you all the different standards across the different levels. So the ones that are related to the same standard, how they progress across the levels. So that is a very, very useful way to try and ascertain whether you're aiming it right or not.
Yeah, what I will say, and what some people sometimes ask, is if they apply, we might change the level further down the line. So when we talk about the kind of assessment a bit later on, your assessor will work with you. So actually, you may have pitched yourself at advanced, but when we're reading it, a lot of your evidence might speak more to leading. So we might recommend, it might be better if you apply on that. Or actually, if we feel you've maybe not quite hitting the standards enough at advanced, and we might recommend senior, and we will work with you to kind of tailor that from there with minimal reworks as possible. It is different paperwork, but again, we can work with you. It's not a kind of pass-fail blind application. It is a very two-way assessment. Again, we'll talk a bit more about that later. But no, there to work with you on this. Okay, so moving through the process now. So you've picked your level. What we ask for is, alongside the application form, is reflective practices, and we ask for a minimum of 3 of these, and that go alongside your paperwork. So I'll talk through reflective practice first, and then we'll go through the application form. So reflective practice is something that looks a bit like this. So this is a probably very basic and generic example now that hopefully everybody on this call can relate to, which is about doing some length of stay analysis. So nice and simple, and hopefully everyone follows. We use the STAR model for reflective practice. So what was the situation? What tasks were you going to undertake? What did you do? And then what the result of that is. Hopefully this isn't too small on the screen. Again, this is the generic example shown on the website, so you'll be able to download this from there to have a look at it in more detail. What we're looking for here is for you to tell us a story of the piece of work you've done. Can be small projects, can be massive projects. The scope is probably unlimited on what we want from here. What we want to know is your journey and your decision making of how you've gone through. It's not about here's my super duper amazing analysis, here's my fancy tool. We're not looking to assess the brilliance of your skills, which I'm sure they are. We're looking to assess your decision making as you go through and why you did the things you did. Not here's my super dashboard, I don't really know why I did it. It's the steps you take up to that. That'll make a bit more sense as we talk through this now. So what we want is that backstory to this. So in this situation, somebody's asked the analyst to provide some length of stay about a newly established assessment unit. What you'll notice next to that first bullet point in the situation is the wrote P 1.1 in brackets. So when we bring up the application form in a minute, what they've very handily done is said this links to this standard. I don't know about you, Sigal, but I do love it when applicants put that on the reflective practice. Just makes it so easy to assess. You're doing all the heavy lifting for us to tell us where to look. This is part of my evidence, and this speaks to this standard. So you've been asked to do that. In this example, there was no analyst in the surgical division to be able to do the required work. So that's why it came to this person. They then want to speak to some stakeholders because they weren't really sure what they wanted to do, or they wanted to check exactly what they wanted to do with length of stay. So again, they've referenced P1.2, which I think will be about talking to others and how you work with others to gain gaps in your information. They then decided that they wanted to be able to drill down and look at it in this way. So again, that's linking the standard P5.3. Unfortunately, I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of all the standards, but they'll make sense when you have them on two screens together from there. And then after they had a conversation, they decided that it would be good to put this in an SPC chart from there. So again, P5.4 might be about, deciding how best to present your information from there. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 standards ticked off in what I hope most people agree is probably quite a simple example from there. We're not looking for complex situations. It's about, documenting the steps you take. So onto the task section from there. So this is now setting out what you're going to do ahead of time. So again, planning how you do it. A lot of this, guarantee everyone in this call will make all these little kind of meta decisions in their head. We just do it on autopilot. Somebody asks you to do piece analysis and you just instantly know in your head what you're going to do. The hardest part probably from this is slowing down, taking a step back and detailing all those steps that, as I say, you definitely all do. So they said they were going to go to a meeting and talk to relevant people to get a bit more about it. So again, that's it, standard. They wanted to do some diagnosis coding. So they spoke to the coding team, got the ICD-10 code, again, working with others, filling in gaps in information. And they were going to split it by this way. They then put these in my evidence attached. So again, what's also great is that might be an email of, hi, clinical coding team, can you give me the ICD-10 codes for these conditions? Really simple bit of evidence. Again, you'll all do, have those emails, have those meeting invites, and they can be attached as evidence straight away. They then said they were going to write some SQL code, and they then said, actually, I've said I'm going to do an SPC chart, and I don't know anything about SPC charts. Oh, look, I've found this course that I'm going to book onto. So again, stating that I'm going to book onto a course. What you can see from that bottom one from there is they've linked it to 3 standards. So there is a bit of overlap in kind of how you do it. So that'll be, could be something about how you fill in gaps in your knowledge, how you keep up to date, or how you share knowledge from there. So again, by saying they're going to book onto a course, you can tick a few standards from there. And into the actions, this is what they did now rather than just planning. So they've said they attended a course. That then links to a couple of standards, and as evidence, they've attached their certificate of attending a course. They've then said, here's my SQL script that I've wrote. So again, they've attached a screenshot or a clipping of the script from there and the standards that speaks to. Obviously, this is the NHS, so the next step was sticking it in a pivot table in Excel, because let's be honest, that's what we all do. So they've given us an example there of how they've presented it from there. What I will say on that point, and I said at the start, this isn't about fancy tools, we are limited in what we have access to or what our own skills are. By saying you've used Excel because that was all you had or because you felt that was the best at the time, it's all evidence in your decision making from there. You could say, oh, I would have loved to stuck it in Power BI or Tableau, or I would have loved to use this to do it. It shows, the thoughts and the application of your knowledge to your work from there. So they then created the SPC charts, and they've given us an example of their output, and they said they shared it at a presentation, and that one ticks off about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 standards from there. So again, it's about sharing your work, sharing your knowledge, presenting it, getting feedback, and attaching some slides from there. So again, something as simple as showcasing your work at a meeting or something can start to hit quite a lot of standards from there. Last bit is the results. So said the team loved it, it was a success, and they've started using this now to identify changes in care they can make from there. So again, a few standards about how your work is applied in relation to patients. They then said a bit about IG, about handle security, or they followed local processes and how they've worked with the data, and they're now working on automating it. So they're now working with others in the business intelligence team to do that. As I say, that's hopefully quite a simple example, and you can see from that kind of how many of the standards get hit from that example from there. I'll pause there for any questions on a reflective practice, and while people are thinking, Sigal, is there anything you want to add that I've missed on them?
No, I'm answering some of the questions that have come up in the chat meanwhile, some specific things. So if people want to look afterwards at what's on the chat to see if they've missed anything, I guess.
Yeah, okay, thank you. What I just will say about the results is it's not about, we don't just want examples if it was a roaring success. Most of the learning will happen if it just didn't work quite well as you hoped, and you know what, if you could go back, you'd do it differently. I do prefer them, to be honest. I love a bit of honesty and a bit of, oh, I wish I could have done this, or it would have been great if this happened, because it really shows your process and your workings of how you do it. So we do cover that in the second part of the reflective practice. So what we just want applicants to do here is just a paragraph or two of what went well from the task. As I just said, what went less well, what would you learn, and if you could do it differently next time, what would you do? So as I joked about Excel before, wouldn't it be great if I had all this super duper software and visualization stuff that I could use, or would it have been great if I had the skills to do this, but I was limited to how I did it in the way I've described from there. So what we're looking for is 3 of them. What I would recommend is kind of, as you're thinking of your example, is get the standards up on another page. And just as I'm kind of, if I flick back to this one, where this person here is link them, is you can kind of tick them off, and there is a little matrix in it on the form to tick off. But what you might find is, you might have a really good example, and you might hit about 75% of the standards in one example. We do still ask for free because we do want a lot more learning. But what you will find then is, you can tailor pick your second or third examples to mop up those standards that you've missed from there. Okay. Okay, any last questions or comments on reflective practices before we talk through the form of it? No? Okay.
I think there's a
Rob?
couple of unanswered ones in the chat about whether we should share real data or dummy data, and how long do you think on average it takes?
Great, thank you. So yeah, I can't see any questions in the chat. I don't know if it's not working. Oh, it says I'm not a member of the chat. That's useful. Oh, can you see the chat, Sigal?
Yes, I can. So there is one question. I was just writing an answer. So there was a question about sharing real data as evidence and whether they need, to replace the data with anonymized data or dummy data, I guess. So I guess my answer would be that you don't really need to share actual data in your, unless it's absolutely relevant to the evidence. It can be dummy data, it can be anonymized, because none of the standards require the actual data as evidence. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, it's not about your output as such. It's about the process you took to delivering that output. So again, if you were showing screenshots of a dashboard, there may be bits of data in there. Happy for it to be in if it's there. Block it out if you don't. If it's particularly sensitive, obviously no patient stuff in it. But no, we're not assessing the quality of your work, of your output in your data. It's your approach to doing that. So no. Exactly. What we do for applicants sometimes is actually maybe you do need to show us the tool work. You want us to show us something because actually the way you've come at it, you do need to see it. You can arrange to have a chat with your assessor, and you could just do a screen share on Teams just to talk them through what you've done. We do that quite a lot where there's some kind of sensitive or confidential work that people are sharing. It's just done confidentially with the assessor, and you don't have to upload anything from that. As I say, we're happy to work with you on any of these little glitches or issues you might have with evidence.
And another option is if you have someone in your organization who knows the work that is already registered, you can have them sign off your evidence, in which case we don't see anything confidential or anything like that. So it can stay within the organization. But of course, you'd need somebody who's registered.
Yeah.
There's another question. Sorry, go on.
No, you go on to the next one, yeah.
There's another question here about how long, on average, the application takes and how much time we recommend to set aside to do this.
Yeah, so this is one of those how long's a piece of string questions, and it will differ for everybody of I'll say the word reflective practice, and some people might shudder at the thought of having to think about themselves and write about themselves. I'm currently in the process of reapplying myself now. I'd say at the minute, I've probably done a few hours sessions, and I'm probably about halfway through doing it. The first time I applied, I probably spent the most time staring at the blank page, thinking, what am I going to put in this? How do I do that? And then once I started, I really snowballed, and it was dead quick from there. That was my experience of doing it. Is this the starting was the hardest. What I would recommend to people is think about those reflective practices and those examples. If you've got 3 or 4, really good projects that you can think of, I'd start with the reflective practice with the standards on your other screen, and just start to tell that story that I've just spoke through before. And you can kind of tailor your story to the standards, because we're all intelligent people on this call. We've got the answers there of what you need to hit, so you can walk us through that. So I don't know what your experience was of the 2 times you've done it.
Yeah, I took longer than I should have, I think, but I tend to do that probably unnecessarily, because I tend to over evidence everything to the nth degree. You don't need to. You need to provide one piece of evidence, and one piece of evidence can evidence more than one thing as well, more than one standard or one, So basically, don't go overboard, and it shouldn't take so long. I think the reflective practice should cover something between 90 and 95% of the standards. So what you need to do is choose 3 pieces that don't completely overlap. So it shouldn't be 3 pieces about your analytical work specifically. One perhaps can be about how you work in a team, and one can be, or how you work with stakeholders. So you can spread those out across the different standards. And what this does is it means that you don't have to then spend a lot of time, because you're basically meeting the standard, providing the evidence. All you need to do is write a very short blurb into the application form, and all the time is gone, or most of the time is gone, into writing the reflective practice. One good way, and what I tend to do, is I start gathering the evidence. So every time I have like a meeting invite where I'm presenting something or something like that, I would just save a copy of the email or a copy of the meeting agenda into my evidence folder. And that allows me then to just pull it up, and I don't have to go look. So there are ways of cutting the time of actually doing the application. There is another question here about how fresh the examples should be. So they should be fairly fresh. I would say 18 months, last 18 months to 2 years. Would you agree, Mark, on that?
Yeah, that's another one, and then would take it on a case-by-case basis, really. So if we take an example of the leading practitioner, it talks about strategy and policy, and that's not something you do every 6 months or every year, so that might be a 3-year-old strategy, because it's still in period, so that would be fine. We may talk about dissertations, massive projects or something like that. They don't come around often. So again, if that was getting to 2 to 3 years old, but it was a bit of a once in a lifetime piece, then we'd happy to work with you on that. But I think the freshness is key for this, because this should be stuff that we're all doing, regularly anyway. It probably would raise more questions if all your examples are 3 or 4 years old, because the assessor might go, what's you been doing in the last 4 years if you've got nothing else since? And some of the questions we talk about, how do you keep up with developments? How do you share stuff? So yeah, we become apparent from there. But I'm confident you'll all have fresh stuff. What we do get asked a lot about is if they've changed roles. So yeah, you've been in a job for however long, and you've done some really good examples. You've now changed jobs in your 6 months to a year in your current job. But in your old job, you might have done some good stuff that you want to talk about. So again, that might be another example where we do have a bit more leeway. You know, if you've maybe not had a chance to do that big project in your new job yet, you can talk about the old one from there. As I said a few times now, we 100% want you to apply, and we 100% want you to pass, and we will work with you and support you. So if you're ever, worried about an example, obviously we've got the session today, and there's the follow-up session to this in 4 weeks' time, I think it is. And that next session is more Q&A. There's no slides in that next one, So do bring those examples to the next session to say, look, I've done this, and you'll get the same answer. Yes, do. We'll work with you on that.
Mm-hmm. There is yet another question, which I think is a really good one. This is about how directly should you be involved in the example provided if you're leading a piece of work, but not doing it directly, not directly wrangling the data or analyzing it? Can you use that as an example? So my answer would be, you can use this as an example of how you lead on a piece of analytical work. So how you lead others into doing the work, how you delegate, how you ensure that that all the legal, all the regulatory and legal things are happening, how you ensure the people doing it have the right skills to do it, and all of those are standards. So how I would use a piece like that is to do the standards that are more related in how you manage your team or manage others in doing the work, rather than as specific examples for what tools to use. So, for example, selecting tools for the team is also a standard. Not all there is, I think there is only one standard that's specific to the analytical work that you do. So just use this example as an example for other standards.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't let it put anybody off if using I wasn't hands-on writing the SQL script or building the dashboard. I just said the lead in the advance, are about, as Sigal said, managing resources and communicating the information, not about the doing. I've said this a lot now. Yeah, it's not about your skills; it's about how you apply your decision or your decision making in doing a task. What I probably should have said at the start actually is you'll all be aware of the National Competency Framework, and a lot of people do ask about the relationship between that and this. How I normally simply quite sum it up is the competency framework is the skills you should have in a job. Professional registration is how you apply those skills, whatever those skills are. So the National Competency Framework will be more about that would want hands-on. You've done something to evidence your skills. Registration is about how you make those decisions and how you use those skills. Okay, are we clear in the chat, Sigal? I don't know why I can't. Apologies to people whose questions I've missed. Yeah, it says I'm not a member of the chat, so I will.
There's two of us.
I'm glad you can see it. Oh, that would have felt really bad. Okay, so the application form. So again, hopefully you've already glanced at this. Fairly standard, to be honest. First section is just a bit about you. So again, looking just for a paragraph or two about your role and a bit about your involvement with AphA and other bits from there. What we've then got is asking people to just share, any published papers you've got, awards you've won, speaking at conferences. It's not the time to be modest. This is to celebrate you as well. So stick all your good news at the top there and really show off to the assessor of how good you are and all the amazing work you've done. Then just want a little bit about qualifications. Again, just one line of topics and years from there. Again, just to show keeping up to date. And then there's a little bit about career history on here. Don't need to go overboard on this. It is just to give the assessor a feel of the role you work in. As I said, we cover the entire analytics family, and it just helps, from the angle the assessor will come at it. An analyst building dashboards would answer questions very differently to data engineers or data scientists and what they do from there. So it just gives that a little bit of extra context. So again, just a few bullet points and just a few years worth of career history. Don't need to give you your life story and every duty you've done in all your jobs from there. So I mentioned this evidence matrix there. So this is really useful for checking you've hit them all. So that's all the standards under the practitioner level. And then what you can do is tick them off as you've covered them in your reflective practice. So like that example where they wrote it in red at the end, as you're going through, tick them off in here, tick off which evidence. So E1 relates to this, E2 relates to that. Super for the assessor to use this, and even better for yourself as a kind of checklist as you're working through, and you'll see where those gaps are. As Sigal mentioned, probably about 90-95% of standards will be evidenced in your reflective practice. There will be some, probably looking towards the bottom of that list, the ones that we start with a C, that are a bit more about kind of your understanding of your role and kind of more generic stuff, whereas you might find them quite hard to put into an example of a piece analysis you've done. So that might be a bit of evidence just by itself. Or when we come to the comments section in a minute, you might just put a bit more in the comments on that bit. So don't worry if you think, oh, I haven't got C2 awareness of how your role links in with the wider organization into reflective practice. If you can't shoehorn it in, don't worry, you can expand on it in separate bits from there. So, Gal, do you want to add anything on evidence and?
No, but we've got a couple of questions.
Oh.
So one of them is about. Do you want me to keep some of these to the end, or are you happy to take these as we go?
Yeah, let's go while they're fresh.
Well, they're fresh. Okay. So there was a question about the high level of technical skills at advanced level, which I think is something that is a very, very good question and very relevant. So, for example, coding, building dashboards, SQL, Python, as you move up the ladder, you may become less and less hands-on, and this is absolutely expected. And you will see that as you look at the standards going across, they go more and more from hands-on and very skills-based to actually managing others to do the work. So it's taken that into account already but it's obviously understood that you may not have example of code if you are leading an analytical team and your team does most of the coding. So is that more or less the right answer to that, Mark?
Yes, definitely. What I will say again, if there is a standard that we feel, again, I said before, might be a bit weaker or not evidenced, as it's not a black and white pass fail, the assessor will be in touch with you and say, oh, I can see what you're trying to get at here. It'd be really good if you could do this, or if you got a different example, maybe. So again, don't let that put any people off.
Yeah, I think that's really good to emphasize the issue. So this is not to fail anyone. This is exactly the opposite. We are here to help you do this meet the standard to be professionally registered, not to fail anyone. So we have absolutely every interest to work with you to get you past the finish line on producing your evidence and doing the right evidence to meet the standards. So use us. If one of your assessors sees something that they're not sure about, they will just contact you and say, could you tell me a bit more about that? Or and sometimes even if you need to do a bit more evidence for one of the standards, generally we just work with you. This is not a pass or fail first time round of type of work. So please do take advantage of having an assessor who is a person who is going to work with you to do this. There was another question that's more specific to technical. Does the application save your progress? Can you come back to it?
Yeah, so how we do it at the minute, I'll talk about the hub in a minute. Okay. It is just an offline application, so it's I think it's an editable PDF at the minute that you can download and upload. I think it's moved away from Word. So what you'll do, you'll download that, and then you can just edit it as you go along, and then you upload the completed document. we do hope to move before a bit more towards a more sophisticated hub, but this is just the first step of using the hub, which is just uploading PDFs or Word documents. So yeah, just as you'd save your progress in a Word document, yeah, you can start and come back to it. And what I will say on that is obviously we're approaching the October window. You might have all the good intentions in the world. You start making a start in October, and life work gets in the way, and you can't apply. You can just roll that over to next time and submit it in what will be the January window, which are quarterly from there. Obviously, it'd be great if you could turn around in the window of the one you've joined the session for now, but we'd rather you did apply at some point than stopping it in October and never coming back to it from there. Okay, are we clear in the chat, Sigal?
Yes, I'm just writing in an answer about how much it costs, which I'm sure you'll get to eventually, but just thought I'll answer that straight away. And out of interest, something about the NCF, whether it's limited to England or is so somebody from Scotland asking whether this Stuart, okay. Whether this this is limited to NHS England. I'm not sure it is. And in a way it shouldn't, because it's not specific to the NHS or to systems. It's actually
but
the role of the analyst.
So do you want to come in and ask in person?
Yeah, well, if it's national, what country are we talking about? Is it national for England or is it national for the UK? Because it's national. I don't think it's national for the UK. I think it's national for England.
Yeah, so the NCF I think is an NHS England led thing, but in terms of AphA and professional registration, that's not affiliated with NHS England or any nation. Yeah, this is your application, not on behalf of any national body or anything from there, no matter what country you're in, Europe, rest of the world from there. So yeah, this is you as part of AphA. AphA's not directly affiliated with NHS England. As you know, we have Welsh, Scottish and Northern Ireland branches, and I think quite a few international members now as well, which I've seen a few come through. So yeah, no, not limited by where your organisation is or where you are. Okay, right, I'll just move on just to keep us on time. So the application form, again, hopefully should be fairly straightforward. So it lists all the standards down the left-hand side, and then we ask you for a bit of commentary. What we don't want here is replicating your reflected practice. So don't just copy and paste what you've put in your reflected practice. What would be good is, so P1.1 is describing the process you take to understand a question. So somebody's asked you to do something, how do you confirm the ask or get a bit more knowledge about that from there? So you might put a comment in reflected practice 1 to say RP1 to say it links to that, and then you might put E1 in the evidence box to say this is the evidence that speaks to that. And then again, what we're just looking for is a paragraph or two, probably no more than that, in the box there, just to expand a little bit. So P1.1, you might, from your reflected practice, just might say, you went back and spoke to the stakeholder. P1.1. This would be just give us a bit more about how that conversation went and what the outcome from that was. P1.2 there, give details of data sources. So in your reflected practice, you might thought in your tasks, I was going to pull data from this table in the warehouse, and I was going to ensure it was suitable in terms of data quality. And again, this might just be a paragraph about use this. I didn't use that. Or when I was looking at DQ errors, there was a load of this missing, date was in the wrong format. This was a free text and a bit rubbish. So this is how I've overcome that. Again, as Sigal said, don't need to go overboard on, we not want hundreds of words in these boxes. With a bit of evidence, referencing your reflected practice, and paragraph or two is more than enough to give us a bit more detail. Sigal, anything to add on that? Have we got any questions in the chat about the form?
Yeah, I think it's. I think the rule should be or is that no more than 250 words. But we would much appreciate if it's not even that long, because we have to read all of it.
We love it though, don't we? I do love finding out what work people are doing.
I do
yeah,
too.
so that form job, I've only got the one slide from this. Again, you can download the forms from there, but it just follows that format. Just give us a bit of expansion on what you've put in your reflective practice from there. As I mentioned earlier, if there's a standard that you struggle to fit into a reflective practice or you struggle into evidence, that's where you might stretch that 250 limit just to give us a bit more detail on something from there. And yeah, we are happy to accept some standards without reflective or practice evidence, if we feel the commentary does cover it enough. Okay, the bit I'm just going to finish off on now is the hub. So this is relatively new still. So previously it was a lot of emails flying around and attaching stuff. Hoping to work towards a bit more of a kind of a better automated system. So in a bit of a hybrid at the minute via the Fed IP hub. So I think when you go on the AphA website now, it does direct you to this, and you can request access all the forms, and you can pick your level and apply on here. It will then look a little bit like this. So this is picking the practitioner level, and you can, as I said, download all the forms from there. You work on them offline, and then once you're ready to upload, again, just like attaching a file, which you'll have done a million times, is upload your files from there, and you can stick a bit of narrative on there. You may have reached out to us beforehand if you've got any questions, but if there was something you weren't too sure of, or you've not uploaded data for confidentiality reasons, you might make reference in the comments there to say, I've uploaded, I've not uploaded this, happy to have a chat with the assessor. Any information you feel the assessor or the committee needs to know from there. You can attach, I think, multiple files at once for your evidence. Some people do rack up 30s, 40s, 50s chunks of evidence. Some people dump them all into like a Word file, so it's just like one Word attachment. Others will zip them and upload them. Again, there's no right or wrong way to get your evidence to us really from there. Whatever works best for you for how you gather it. I've kind of whizzed through the hub there. I don't know if there's anything in the chat about the hub or anything or any questions.
Is there something about not pressing the submit for approval until you're done uploading everything together? Or can you do it piecemeal?
Yeah, you can. I think it's all separate. Yeah, so your reflective practice will be an upload, and your evidence will be an upload, and your application form will be an upload. So you can do 3 all separately.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's the 3 from there. Again, do reach out to the inbox. You can upload stuff by mistake. We can help you pick it. I think you can even recall stuff yourself and deselect it for approval and stuff from there. Again, you'll all be fine. It's a fairly standard portal, to be honest. Okay, last slide for me is just some of the key dates. So yeah, today is the first kind of kickoff session, and the window opens in a week's time. Mentioned the Q&A workshop earlier. So on the 18th of October, I think a similar time for this. That's a very, very informal one. So I've not done that myself. I'm not doing this one. I've not run it myself for a while, but whenever I do it, there's no slides. It is just open to the group. The expectation is you're all, started or, near the end of your process, and that's your opportunity to speak to a few assessors or whoever's in the room from the committee at the time, talk for your examples, listen to where other people are up to. So I would recommend any questions near the end. Great place to go to get those last little tweaks. Or as Sigal said, you might be stressing over the amount of volume you're attaching. Take it there, talking through, and I'm sure they'll tell you, oh no, that's more than enough. You sound like you're well on your way from there. And then, so just a bit of time scales from once you've submitted. So the window will close in October. I think the date's to be confirmed for the next professional development committee, but in that November committee is when they'll get assigned to an assessor. And then the assessor will have till the next professional development committee to sign that off, again, depending on Christmas and December and January's, when the group will reconvene, and it'll be in January when you'll find out that. I'm sure you will be successful, because as we said, we want you to pass, and we'll be in touch to work through any issues if there is some from there. And again, the cycle will start again, so it's 3 monthly windows from there. So we work for January, so then everything's clear to then as the new window opens in January from there. So as I said, if you are struggling for October, more than fine to finish application in January window from there. And that is it for the slides today. We've got 9 minutes left. I don't know if there's anything else in the chat or if there's any other hands to go up. I'm going to stop sharing my slides.
There was one question about professional registration cost, and I did answer that. So there is no cost for, so not from AphA side, there is no cost, but there is a cost to being admitted onto the public register, and that's £25 a year. So it's in addition to the AphA membership. You have to be a member of AphA to be on the register, and you have to pay separately to be on the register as well. I hope this answers the question. So we don't take money for the assessing or anything like that. So I mean, AphA doesn't charge you for the application separately from the membership.
Yeah, that's right. That's a Fed IP is the umbrella professional body. That's the fee they want from that.
Yeah.
Okay, are we clear in the chat?
Let me see. Something came in. Do we have LinkedIn page for AphA? Yes, there is. I think it's called AphA Analysts.
Yeah, I'm not on LinkedIn, but yeah, I believe there is one.
I'll try and find it as you answer the other questions. And
so you're gonna have to tell me what the questions are because I can't see them. Unless are we clear in the chat? Oh, you're on mute, Sigal, sorry.
sorry, there are no more questions in the
wonderful. Chat. Okay, right then. If there is nothing else, we'll call time on that. So hopefully you found it useful. So it was just a quite high-level walkthrough of kind of what the process is, and hopefully kind of answered a few questions, or anybody who is looking at the forms with dread is hopefully made it sound a bit simpler process. As I say, we want you to apply, we want you to pass. Yeah, make the start. Yeah, it'll be great to see as many applications as we can get in October. And we won't hold it against you if you do put it off till January, as long as you do it at some point. Okay, thank you everybody. You can have 7 minutes back as well as a little bonus. So thank you, see you later.
thank you.
Thanks.